Hello all, Namaskar. My name is Dr. Rajendra Babu, working as faculty member in the Department of Studies and Research in Library and Information Science from Tumkur University, Tumkur. Welcome all. So we'll be discussing about open educational resources to all the participants over here, and we'll be discussing on a lot of, what are all the open education resources available, and it's their use, their benefits, their advantages, and what are all the various sources nationally and internationally available on open educational resources. So this is the whole things we'll be discussing. And if you have any questions, you can always shoot a mail to me. My email ID is hrajendra.babu, hrajendra.babu@gmail.com. With this, we'll move on to the presentation. So I've shown this picture because it's a picture of iceberg. So where whatever we could see on the top of the iceberg is what we could see or what we can find information in the internet world. So what is underneath is the huge information which is not found by anybody, which is unearthed, and this is where I thought this picture is appropriate for me to show you. So we will be discussing about scholarly communication in this presentation, open access resources. So how scholarly communication has been evolved and how the beginning of scholarly communication, especially in the journal communication, research articles, all that we'll be discussing in our presentation, and what are all the sources available, both open access sources as well as free sources and paid sources. So we'll discuss because I'm giving more thirst on open access resources because world is moving towards openness. So especially in the research information, the more it is open, the wider it is being used, and it is being used for the public good. Then we'll actually talk about what open educational resources are, how they are being developed, and how they are being maintained, what are all the open education resources available in the national level as well as international level. We'll be discussing that, and I'll be concluding that my presentation with the conclusion after the open educational resources. So to start with, we'll find out how the origin of science communication has started. So earlier there were only print available. Then we used to write manuscripts in the hand. Then it is being printed. So this is what it is. First journal started in the year 1965. Exactly the date is Monday, 5th January 1665. By the name of the journal is Journal des Sçavans. So this has been started by Denis de Salo in France. So this is a 12-page quadro pamphlet. We could say quadro pamphlet is if you fold four folds of a A4 size, so it will become a 12-page quadro pamphlet. So then on 6th March 1665, Philosophical Transactions of Royal Society, published by Henry Oldenburg, has started in London by the Royal Society of London. Why these journals started? We all know the history of printing. Printing started in 1439 by Johannes Gutenberg, and the first book printed was Bible. So Bible on mobile types. Then from 1439 to 1665, the scientists used to communicate their research on how they what the research they are doing and how they are performing their research. All these things either only in two ways. One is writing letters to each other or meeting somewhere, so they'll be discussing. So they are sitting in the streets of London or on the evening. So they decided that why don't we start some formal communication where what research we are doing, what findings we are finding out, so that others should not be duplicating the same research. Then this journal started. The first journal started called Journal des Sçavans in France, and second journal is Philosophical Transactions of Royal Society of London. So we all know there is a caption called "Knowledge is Power." So the caption is given by Sir Robert Boyle. So no, sorry, Francis Bacon, Sir Francis Bacon, who has given this caption called "Knowledge is Power." So he was also one of the founding members of these journals in the Royal Society of London. So then there was a guy, a Nobel laureate called Francis J. Boyle. So these are all the people who have started, who are responsible for starting this journal. So once the journal started, people used to write whatever they have done the research and submit to the journal. Then, to finding out the authenticity of the articles or the research, the system of peer review started. So peer review mainly started to find out if you are doing a research on particular area, somebody who is working in the same area will be validating your research. Means they'll check the findings of your research is right or wrong, accurate or not. They'll check and certify. So upon the certification, the article used to be published. So this is done because of the three reasons. One is to build the scientific knowledge or building the body of scientific literature. The system of peer review started. Now we have a lot of systems of peer reviews, like single peer review, double peer review, blind review, double blind review. Means you will not be knowing who has written the article or who has done the research, but you will be validating the work only. Then this is being done because to increase the scientific reputation of the person or the research. So whenever somebody submits an article or research, they'll be validated using peer review. There are many methods, as I said, peer review. So once it is done and the article is being published, so it increases the reputation of the author, reputation of the scientist, reputation of the writer, so that others can access it authentic. Then the third point is this is increased status of individual as well as institutes research or universities research. If you do peer review, if you come out successfully out of peer review, that increases the status of the individual. Means if the article is being accepted, so that means the value of the article is high and somebody else have certified that this article is good. Then the article may be, if you are an individual author, it will be coming to you, or if you are a corporate author, means if you are working for an organization or R&D organization or a private MNCs, your authorship goes to corporate authorship. So that also increases the institute's reputation or university's reputation and their research. That's how the system of peer review started. So it started, somewhere in the beginning of 18th century, and it has continued even today. But it has gone into many transformations, as I said. Then somewhere in 1950s, so metrics have started. Like, you all know Eugene Garfield, who is the father of citation analysis or citation metrics. So he has started an institution called Institute for Scientific Information, Philadelphia, United States of America, where he started validating the value of your research. Means if you have written an article, how many people are using it, how many people are citing it for their research. So if the more people starts using your research, the value of your research is more. The value of your research is increased. The productivity is very high for your articles and your research. So the first metric started, called Science Citation Index. The second metric started called Social Science Citation Index. Third metric somewhere in 1990s started is called, Humanities Index. So these three are, cumulatively called as Web of Science today, or earlier it was Web of Knowledge by Institute of Scientific Information, Philadelphia. So these metrics have started to, increase the value of the productivity, value of the research. If the more, citation comes, the more value of your article. So it all started and going well. Somewhere in 1970s, there was a huge crisis started in the publishing industry. Because as I said, these first two journals, Journal des Sçavans and Philosophical Transactions of Royal Society of London, started and then started by society publishers. They are publishing for non-profit purpose. Later in the 18th and 19th centuries, private players started publishing activities. So there were a lot of like elsewhere, Taylor and Francis, Sage publications. All these people have started. So in 1990s, huge price increase has started. That's called serial crisis, where if you have a journal of 100 rupees, immediately it has increased to 150 rupees. So where libraries were facing a lot of problem in catering to the journals because they have a fixed budget. Libraries gets normally budget for a year, and if the price starts going up, escalating, it's very difficult for the libraries to manage. One thing. Second thing is, subjects also started increasing more and more. Like earlier, only very few subjects were there. Then multidisciplinary nature of subjects and interdisciplinary nature of subjects started growing. So librarians were finding a lot of difficulties in catering to the user requirements within the limited budget. So that has also played a huge role in non-subscription of the journals, so that you'll not be able to cater to the user needs. You are not able to. Then somewhere in 1990s, so the actually internet project started in 1989 and ended in 1993. So this is internet has emerged in 1993. That's when a lot of new journals, especially in the print revolution, has moved into online revolution journals. Like earlier, whenever a journal published, it used to take 4 to 6 weeks to reach India because it has to come by surface mail or air mail. Then now, after the emergence of internet, so Tim Berners-Lee has introduced the internet. So emergence of internet, immediately you are able to see journals online worldwide. So soon after the journal is published, you'll be able to see the journals on internet. That is one thing. Second thing is, digital documents started increasing. So the speed of the communication, speed of publishing, speed of everything started increasing with the emergence of internet. Then information explosion started. As I said, 1665, 1439, first print journal, printing machine has started. From then, whatever information used to there, it used to come in the form of a books. So now that internet has come, information explosion started increasing because, whatever documents used to, get generated, gets generated in the soft copy format or electronic format. So copying that or distributing that or reproducing that, reaching to the people is made easy. So that's where information explosion started, and doubling of information concept has come into picture, where we have piece of information. So it will take 100 years to double that information. So in the print world it used to happen, but in the online world it used to happen. It has happened, doubling of information. Today we are taking 18 months to double the information. So terabytes, zettabytes information is being generated and being distributed over the internet. So that is also playing a huge role in the information explosion point of view. So once the internet came and once the online started, online journals started coming in, a new concept called open access publishing started. As I said earlier, serial crisis has led into this because a lot of journals started increasing the price. So editors were unrest by then. The editors are the normally academicians or research scientists who are doing the honorary job for the journals. They don't take money, but they do it honorary. When the journals started increasing prices or publishers started increasing prices, these editors find a lot of difficulty in answering people, and they themselves were uncomfortable with this development. So many of the journal editors have resigned to their positions as editors in the commercial journals. They came out of it. Now someone like Stephen Harnad is the major name in this. He's a prolific scientist in America, where he has resigned to Elsevier Group and started his own communication. Like he has started publishing his own articles over his own blog or his own website. So then in 1995, the first open access initiative, the Budapest Initiative has started. 2002, London University has started the DOAJ, all of Directory of Open Access Journals. Today, more than 12,500 journals are available. Today, commercial journals are more than 1 lakh today. but it has taken 350, 360 years to grow to 1 lakh, whereas it has taken only 20, 25 years to grow from zero to 12,500 journals amidst a lot of pushback from the publishers, lobby from the cash-rich commercial publishers. Even then, the open access is proliferating. We'll discuss that later. So these are all the products of scholarly communication. Like major products are e-journals, especially journals. In e-journals are majorly, there are three kinds of publishing models available for e-journals. The first model is society journals, where non-profit organizations starts publishing journals like IEEE, ASME, ACS. These are all the journals publish or in library science, JASIST, Journal of American Society for Information Scientists. These are all the society publications started e-journals. Then came commercial publishers like Elsevier, Taylor and Francis, or Sage journals. So these publishers, publishing journals is commercial journals. Then came the parallel concept called open access, where a lot of individual players, a lot of scientists, a lot of organizations, a lot of societies have started open access journals where freely publishing their work for the benefit of the community or the users. Then came e-journals. The second product of scholarly communication is e-books. Again, we have a lot of e-book formats, open access books. Again, for example, we have a website called Directory of Open Access Books, where you can search through millions of books here, and you can access these books in these places. Then Google eBooks, there are more than 50,000 books available for you to access Google eBooks. You can go to books.google.com, or you can search Google Books in Google search engine. You will retrieve Google Books website, where you can see the books, you can read the books, but you will not be able to download or you will not be able to print the books here because of the copyright restrictions. Whereas in open access books, Directory of Open Access Books, you can download books also if you wish to. Then new concept called interactive ebooks. For example, I have a book, okay, I'm reading a book. So parallelly, I'm taking a notebook to write onto the notebook saying that whatever I have read, I made a notes of that. So sometimes if I miss a book, I have a notes to read. Or if I have missed a notes, I have a book, but I don't know what notes I have made. So these books have been very helpful, where I'm talking about print books, where we have a book, you have half of the book is content, the half of the page is content, rest of the page is plain. So whatever you read in the top of the book, you can make a note of that in the below. So similarly, in ebooks also, you have a lot of interactions. You can ask questions, or you can be interactive in ebooks, where you can mark notes, or if you are coming across a important point, you can say, Mark, please note this and remind me later, or please note this and send a mail to me. So these kind of interactiveness is possible in interactive books. Then came indexing and abstracting databases. As I said, Eugene Garfield is the father of this. There are many types of indexing and abstracting databases available. I'm mentioning only few here. Google Scholar is the major and free of the cost, where you can find out what all the who is accessing your information, what is the value of your article, how many citations have come for an article, and patents also you can search in Google Scholar, where you get a lot of academic information in Google Scholar. Then PubMed is a it's a medical database. Earlier it was Medline, so converted into PubMed, where if you have access to PubMed, or it's a free of access, if you search for any information, if you find an article, that article itself in the down says it is available free of cost for you, or you can download, or you can purchase it. The open access symbol will be there, where you can find out, or your institution has access to that through subscription. That will also be shown in PubMed. So then Biomed Central is the group of Biomed Central is a group of 450 journals recently acquired by Springer, where you can get a free access to all the journals and books here. So moving further, we have patents databases, we have aggregators, full text databases, like show, in India, Indian patents database, in US patents database, Japanese patent database, especially if you're working in organizations like, R&D organizations or multinational organizations, you definitely need patents information, and one has to be very clear about patents and patent information, what is available in there. Then comes Indian, research and thesis and dissertation database called Shodh Ganga, and Shodh Ganga 3 is a database of all the research proposals, because whatever completed projects we can find out using Shodh Ganga, but whatever research in progress, that can be found from Shodh Ganga 3. Then eShodh Sindhu is an initiative by InflibNet, Information Library and Information Library Network. So it has got UGC Infonet, Enlist, Indest. It's a consortium of 15,000 journals and many bibliographic and citation and factual databases, number databases, especially like statistics databases for useful for higher education institutions. Then electronic thesis and dissertation databases, as I said, Shodh Ganga. NDLTD is a worldwide, one of the biggest thesis and dissertation databases. OATD, Open Access Thesis and Dissertation Databases. PQTD, Proposed Dissertation and Thesis Databases. So this is an open, concept. PQTD, Open Access. Then Open Thesis is another database where you will get, a lot of, open, thesis and dissertations available. Then a lot of reference sources are also available, in the internet, or free of cost. Now, why I'm mentioning this here, because reference sources are very important for you to consult when in doubt. Means it's not a continuous reading text, but if you are reading through an article or a journal or any other research material, so you go through dictionaries and find out the meaning and definitions, origin or etymology, or synonyms, anything you can find using dictionaries, or when this word started. For example, plagiarism. Plagiarism, a word, started, long back, but it has been introduced into Oxford English Dictionary in the year 1602. So that's how, you can find out the, value of the words and find out the meanings of the words. Then the encyclopedia is a, reading text and depth, information will be available for you to access. Then geographical sources, especially, maps, atlas, gazetteers, all those things, will be useful for you. Then very important one, country, demographic and related information, because no database will give you this, country information or demographic information related things. There is one source called CAA Factbook. CAA means Central Intelligence Agency. Is a, a security agency in the America. They maintain CAA Factbook, where you will get complete details about a country, which I will discuss in my presentation later. Then comes commercial database called EIU, Economic Intelligence Unit, where they have a lot of similar to CAA Factbook. It's a parent company of Economist magazine, where they'll give you, country information, but it will be paid. You'll have to pay, shell out a lot of money. Then there are a lot of business databases free of cost available for you, like Gartner, one of the best, business databases available. Normally, if you want to find a Gartner report, it will be minimum $3,000, $4,000. So that's how it is so important. Data Monitor, more of a European based, KPMG, BCG, Boston Consulting Group, Ernst & Young, and all those people are financial, business, country information, all that providers. So another one is annual reports, where you will get a lot of information on a company, particular company or organization or institution, about their activities. Then Multex and Investex is useful for, more of a business information and commerce related information. Then numerical and statistical databases like, Statistical Bureau of India, or any lot of statistics, how many hectares of dry land is there in India, how many hectares of, water sources is available, all that information will be available here. As I said, audio visual resources is also, what my recording is a audio visual resource for you. You'll be able to see, you'll be able to listen, and you'll be able to see the, presentation as well. So then, EBSCO is a, discovery tool, federated search, where, you can search through a lot of other databases to come out one result. And commercial journal platforms like EBSCO, EBSCO Host, or Emerald Insights, or your Science Direct, Springer Link, these are all the commercial journal platforms. Then citation indexes, as I said, Web of Science, which contains 8,850 science citation indexes, journals indexed, and 3,500 social science citation index journals, and 7,700 humanities citation index journals. Then Scopus is a database of Elsewhere. It is also similar to Google Scholar, where 26,600 titles are available for you to access. Open Access Citation Database, which is a new database developed especially for open access journals, which is in a developmental stage. It is not full-fledged developed. And Google Scholar, CiteSeer, Academia, Mendeley, ResearchGate, these are all academic networks, academic social networks for anybody to access and get memberships with. CAS, or Chemical Abstract Service, or SciFinder. SciFinder is more of a scientific in nature, and if you want to search using a formula, this database is useful for you. Then our own India developed JGate or FedGate, where 32,000 journals. Informatics has developed this, where 32,000 journals and thousands of ebooks and other scholarly information is available for you to access. This is very important, iScholar, because it has got more than 300 all Indian journals. All Indian journals at one place. It is called iScholar, developed by Informatics India Limited. It's part of their packages. But if you once subscribe this database, you'll be able to access all the 300 journals online, Indian journals online for you. Then open access resources, as I said, Directory of Open Access Journals has got 14,000 plus journals, and Directory of Open Access Books, thousands of ebooks available. And adding to that, PLOS, Public Library of Science, is one of the best biomedical journals. 7 journals are available in the field of biomedical sciences, where one of the top is equivalent to Elsevier journals and top impact factor journals, and Biomed Central, which I discussed earlier. So open access publishing, there are many types of open access publishing. Green, gold, green means your own institutional repositories. Gold means open access journals online. Directory of Open Access Journals and Open Access Books is a publishing platform for both journals and books on the open access basis. PLOS, Biomed Central, as I said, hybrid open access, where publishers, commercial publishers have started publishing open access route, where, for example, if you want to publish an article in a famous journal, you may have to pay, say, for example, $4,500 if you pay. So your article will be free of cost, free of access cost for everybody worldwide in that particular commercial journals. Then comes, this is a big problem India is being faced. Predatory job publishing means how you have open access journals and you have fake open access journals which are harming the industry. And in this fake open access publishing, India stands number 3rd in the list. So we are most corrupt predatory publishing country. Means I'm not blaming the country, but our India publishes highest number of predatory journals. Means they say open access journals, but if you pay some money, they will without peer review, without stringent copyright policies and stringent editorial policies, they'll publish the journal immediately. They'll publish the article immediately. Then dark open access is something very fascinating phenomena happening today, where you might have heard about Sci-Hub, where you will get all the articles, copyrighted articles, free of cost, if you want to download here. So then comes open education actually. So open education is a growing body of shared education. Means you have a resource, you share it on the principle of sharing. So these open education, is a concept. It is built on the principle that, using technology, using educational resources, you share a lot of information across all the communities, or information and knowledge to all the people around the world. And it is important for you to share this information in the interest of mankind, or in the interest of, human beings, for their benefit across the world as much as possible. So this open education is a concept which includes all the resources, like all the resources of education, all the tools and practices that are free, especially legally free. Means you should not be ending up into legal issues once you share, and no financial barriers available, and no technical barriers. So, and it can be fully utilized for your research purpose, and it can be fully shared. All the resources can be fully shared, and these resources can be adopted by anybody in the digital environment. For example, if you want to incorporate those resources onto your, digital libraries, onto your library websites, you are free to do that. So these are, it is evolved from open access philosophy, like it is free sharing, to reduce the duplication or prevention of duplication, and enable the access to the shareholders or beneficiaries, and to reduce the restrictive practices like intellectual property rights or copyrights or patents or trademarks or legal issues. It is free of all these legal issues, and it also increases the economic efficiency. It promotes economic efficiency because it is open access, open educational resources. You need not to pay anything. You need not to, take any copyright permissions, nothing. So you can use it, these resources to promote, economic efficiencies and educational beneficiaries. So at the end, any teaching and learning material that is available on the internet can be considered as open education resources, and it should be accessible and without any cost, and it can be accessible to anybody, is known as open education resources. So it is includes a many, number of resources from the worldwide. Sometimes they include complete courses or course modules, means syllabus modules, and syllabi, for of all the institutions, of all the courses. Then lectures, it can be audio lectures or it can be video lectures available for people to listen to on their free time if they are not able to access, or if they are not able to attend to the classes. And it can be assignments, whatever people have submitted their assignments, those assignments also can be found as open educational resources. Quiz, a lot of quiz and quiz materials, background to quiz, and after the quiz, answers to the quiz, all those can be considered as, or encompasses, open educational resources. Then laboratory notebooks or lab information, classroom assignments, or what are the teaching methods and principles of teaching methods, and pedagogical materials used for the teaching. What is the teaching learning material? Simulations, for example, if you want to show it as a chemical reaction or something, it can be shown in the form of simulation. When those simulations are also saved, are considered as open educational resources. So as I said, this complete concept of open educational resources is standing at the open philosophy. Everything should be accessible to people. They should be able to, add or create and share it. So using these can be open educational resources can be developed using open source software, so that no copyright restrictions and licensing issues will be there. Open source hardware, it is available for everybody to access, and it should be free for anybody to access, and it should be following open standards, because if you want to bring it to the openness, and everywhere and however you want to access this, should be able to support using open standard. And open access research and open access content can be part of open education resources. Any designs, any new architectural design, or any diagrams, new diagrams, that is part of open education resources. Open knowledge, open data, means if you do a research, if you conduct a research, and you can say, now it is called a research data management, so you can share your data to worldwide for anybody to access. Then open content, it is similar to open knowledge. And open courseware, this is an initiative by MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where the students have started uploading all their notes, and teachers have started uploading all their lectures and lecture notes. So that is the database is started. We'll discuss that later. Then, open educational resources and open educational practice. It is very important for you to inculcate the practice of, sharing openness, open educational resources among the people. Then, so it is a teaching and learning materials on any medium, or it can be digital medium or any other medium. So it sits on the public domains where people can access, freely and no licensing restrictions. This works on open license and no cost for access or use of, you don't need to pay any, cost for this, and you can adapt that to your situation, and you can improve upon that, or you can redistribute the same material to anyone without any restrictions or very less restrictions. So this is a concept introduced in the year 2002 by UNESCO. We all know what is UNESCO, United Nations Economic, Social, Scientific and Cultural Organization. They have introduced this concept of open education resources in the year 2002. So open educational resources has increasingly been recognized by international community, and it's an innovative tool for meeting the challenges, especially work-life challenges. Sometimes because of my work pressure, I'll not be able to, attend to some, open education, courses or open education materials. So I can use this to fill up that gap, to find out what material it has been discussed. I can always go back and re-look into it, and it also supports or enables lifelong learning. So that's what it is. If somebody stops learning, that's the end of it. Similarly, these open educational resources supports and encourages lifelong learning, and it can be used by all the age groups and across the age groups. No restrictions, on the usage, and it is, diverse educational levels. You can be a graduate or undergraduate or any other level of education, and any modes. It can be online mode, offline mode, or audio, video, worldwide. So that's what open education resources is all about. Then open, as I said earlier, it should be freely accessible, open licensed, and useful for teaching, learning, research purpose, and independent of file format. Any file format you will be able to, means standard, worldwide standard file formats are used here. So it started by, UNESCO in 2003, and it is, again, you can use these resources, you can remix it, you can improve it, and you can redistribute, these open education resources without any restrictions. That's the philosophy of openness. So it is enables motivation for the users, and many people can be considered, this can be considered as an alternative educational, resources along with the classroom learning. This is a background, so I'm not getting into this because I have said already about this. It is being created by, based on the MIT's open courseware, which is started in, USA. So based on that, UNESCO started using this method to develop. So, and this is developed because, the world is changing, especially today. What you are learning, listening, and what I am telling is the exactly what it is. Because of the COVID, we have come to this position. Otherwise, I would have come to, the college, and I have delivered a lecture there, and you would have come there and sat there listening my lecture. But now it is, since our mobility is, restricted, so we are using, online mode of teaching and learning. So this is a new phenomena. This is a global phenomena today. So this is a phenomena encourages open education worldwide. So it is an effort making open educational resource content available for people to gather momentum in their learning and research. In the interest of time, I'm moving a little fast. So it is started in first UNESCO World Open Education Resource Congress, which was started in 2012, especially UNESCO headquarters. In 2004, MIT started OpenCourseware. So based on the principles of MIT's OpenCourseware, this concept has started. Open education resources, started first UNESCO. UNESCO has started first World Open Education Resources Congress in the year 2012 in the UNESCO headquarters in Paris. So where a lot of people attended, especially ministers of education of the countries, human resource development ministers of the many countries, senior policy makers of the countries, expert practitioners who are in that particular area, and researchers and relevant stakeholders of these open education resources. They are all met to discuss open education initiatives, and and they have adopted Paris Open Education Resources Declaration. So it is a historical decision they have taken in Paris. They have started a declaration. It's a momentum they have started for open education resources. And the second World Open Education Resources, Ljubljana, Slovenia, started in 2017. So they also, a lot of similar people came, and over 500 participants attended from 100 UNESCO member states. Worldwide, we have all the countries are the member states of UNESCO, but 500 participants from 100 countries, on an average 5 people from a country, especially heads and senior decision makers and policy makers, have attended the second World OER conference. So here they have brought out 5 strategies in the 2017 OER Congress held by this one. The first one is building the capacity of users to find, reuse, create, and share open access, open education resources. Means we have to build a capacity within the country, infrastructure within the country, policies within the country, for the users to find, reuse. Means the major concept of open education resources is use and reuse, and create a new content and share the open education resources across the member countries. And to overcome the language and cultural issues, open education resources will be recommended. Then ensuring inclusive growth, especially inclusive and equitable access. You have to include everybody, and you have to give access to everybody to the quality open education resources. And in open education resources, we have to build a sustainable models. We cannot build a model which works today and fails tomorrow, or we can build a model only works for a month or a week. No, it has to be continuous and sustainable, and it should sustain all the weathers in the technology developments, education developments, or policy developments, or user orientation, everything. It has to develop a sustainable model. Fifth one is, along with the development of sustainable models, you have to build a supportive policy environments in the countries for everybody to use it, supporting the policies. Unless you have policies, it's very difficult for anybody to access these OER resources. So this is a slide which will give you glimpses of what the growth of internet is. We have Wikipedia started in 2004. They have got 57,34,000 English only Wikipedia articles. Wikipedia has got 176 languages, and today, because of internet's proliferation, 50% of the world population access internet. This is a data based on January 2020, and 51% of people access internet using their mobile devices, not any other things. And in Google, 3.5 billion searches done by a day. We have 7.5 billion people in the world, and 3.5 billion, it's almost like 48% or 45% of the people searches performed every day. And we have 2.23 billion Facebook users, and for every 3.22 people in the world, one has a Facebook account. That kind of a depth Facebook has gone into, and this is staggering. 300 hours of video uploaded in a minute in YouTube. Only in 1 minute, 300 hours of video has been uploaded, and there are over 162 million of number of active blogs are available in the world. So David Wiley is the famous scientist in the area of open educational resources. He has given 5 R activities. So the first R activity is retain. So whatever we have to retain that, and we have to maintain the content copies. For example, if you can download, duplicate, store, or manage. Second one is reuse, 5 R's which I has given. See, he can use the right to use the content in a wide range of ways, like in a class or in a study group or a website or a video, wherever it is, you should be able to use it and reuse it. And you have to revise it. Means if you find there is a small changes to be done for the content, you can have a right to adopt, adjust, modify, or alter the content, say translation the content into another language and changing the content into little more better way, all these things. And remix. So this is a right given to you to combine the original or revised content with other materials. Means we can see in the, especially in the songs, we have remix. Means old songs will only take the lyric and add the new music to it. So similarly, you take the content and combine that with some other revised content or revised way of presenting it to incorporate the new content into a mashup or something else is remix. Then redistribute. So once you do all the four above, you can share it with anybody, or you can upload it to anywhere, any place. So you can share the the right to, you have a right to share the copies of original content as well as revision content, remixed content. So all that for people to use it. So these are all the advantages of open education resources: expanded access to learning, then ability to modify course materials, you can change it, enhancing the course material, you can enhance that by adding images, videos, text, all that. Then rapid dissemination of, quickly dissemination of information is possible. Then cost saving for students, especially because today the education is very a costly affair, and open educational resources brings a respite for you to save the cost. These are all the disadvantages. Means quality and reliability, because everybody and anybody can do create a content, and anybody can distribute a content. So the quality and relevance is something which is in a question. And sometimes you get a limited restrictions, not complete restrictions, or complete license, free license for you to save. So some reservations will be there, you need to understand that, otherwise you will be ending it into a legal issues. Sometimes technology also is a boon, at the same time it's a pain. So sometimes technology itself updates in the software or new hardware requirements, old videos cannot be played in new players. These are all the technology glitches available. So I'm not getting into this, just where and how information intellectual property rights is intervening this. Hard copy versus soft copy, copyright, digitization versus bound digital documents. Means you have a hard copy, you scan that and convert into a digital copy, or you create a original bound digital copies. And licensing issues one need to be aware of. And OER commons, this is very important, we'll discuss that little from now. Then DRM, digital rights management, is very important, especially in the copyright world, and especially in the digital content world. And you need to have a seamless internet access for accessing these open education resources. Then version control is very important, because it's a technology glitch again. You have first version, but you are suggested to look at the second edition or second version. So if you don't have access to second version, it will again, a version control problem will start. And supportive institutional policies or country policies and practices are also very important in the development of open education resources. So socio-technological institutions around the world. So far we have discussed technological institutions like digital divide. Some has access to information, some doesn't have. Some countries advanced, some countries lagging behind. This is a digital divide. And internet affordability and access is the biggest social issue. In India it has been solved because of the introduction of Jio. Thanks to Jio, which has been introduced in November 2016. Then all the companies have started introducing a lot of data access. Earlier, for 1 GB of data or 2 GB of data, we knew we should pay 250 rupees, and we used to use that very carefully. Now Jio, if you recharge your mobile for 200 rupees or 120 rupees, you will get full month 1.5 GB data for per day, 100 SMS and unlimited calls. So that's the affordability, and it has enabled the access also. And net neutrality, for example, Google gets a lot of bandwidth compared to Yahoo. So these are net neutrality. It itself is a big topic to discuss. And streaming difficulties, especially if you don't have a seamless access to internet, it's very difficult for you to stream. That's the reason the organizers of this, FDP has asked us to, make a video and share it across, so that if somebody has an internet bandwidth problem, they shouldn't be having any problem online. Licensing, all these things. So these are all the major players in open educational resources. MIT OpenCourseware, BC Campus Open Educational Resources, the National Repository of Open Educational Resources, Shodhganga, Shodhgangotri, eGyanKosh. eGyanKosh is a database of all the notes available for IGNOU. IGNOU is the India's world's biggest open university. And EPG Pathshala, it's a initiative of MHRD, where similar to eGyanKosh, a lot of lecture notes are available here. OER Commons, which is very important, we'll discuss that. And there are 1,200 education standards itself, from kindergarten to 8th standard. So using these standards, we can develop content accordingly. So this is what MIT OpenCourseware, as I said. MIT OpenCourseware started in, it was started in 1999, then proposed OpenCourseware in the year 2000, but full-fledged started in 2004. It is a free open publication. It includes thousands of MIT courses, notes as well as videos covering the entire MIT curriculum, and millions of learners and educators worldwide use this. Even I use MIT Courseware, I use Shodhganga, I use eGyanKosh, EPG Pathshala and all. So it is, even today it is growing. It is brought out by a scholar and OCW scholar. There are new products have come using MIT OpenCourseware, OpenCourseware Scholar, OpenCourseware Educator. So ever since the MIT started, the value is growing everything. MIT is the #1 technology institution, technology universities in the world itself. So they are the #1. So their content will be also #1. These are the milestone, major milestones, of MIT Courseware. So it was announced in New York Times in the year 2001. 50 courses published in 2002. Similar to our SWAYAM in India, but it is magnanimous in size. So official site has been launched in 2003. By then there were 500 courses published, and it adopts open, Creative Commons license. Creative Commons license is something where the author can, share the copyright with, people on a fee or a non-fee basis. In the year 2004, 50, 100, 125 millions of visits, were found in the year 2008, 2010, and 2012, respectively. 1 billion page views and 175 million visits were recorded in the year 2014. And more than 2,400 live courses, means it's not a recorded one, live courses. As and when the teacher comes into the classroom and teaches, that will be live, similar to Facebook Live, started in 2017. And there are 1.7 million, means 1 million is equal to 10 lakhs. So 17 lakhs people subscribe to OpenCourseware YouTube channel. They have a YouTube channel, and in the year 2018, there were 17 lakhs people worldwide subscribe to this, OpenCourseware. The second one is BC Campus Open Ed Resources. So it's a textbook collection. It is Canada's first major repository of open education resources. It is a subset of open education resources, open textbook. So it is, which can help improve learning experience of students while, finding difficulties or financial barriers, in their academic, pursuit. So it can be freely used by anyone. You can be a student, you can be an instructor, librarian, members of publics, anybody can access this BC Campus website. But the open textbooks were introduced to make higher education more accessible by reducing the cost to students and lessen the financial burden among them. So textbooks are open for you to access BC Campus website. And this is a discussion I was having, OER Commons. It is a public digital library of open education resources worldwide. and anyone can access, anyone can create, anyone can collaborate, anyone can update or upload worldwide to improve the curriculum. That curriculum can be uploaded here. So there are the education levels or education activities supported by OER Commons are preschool, means preschool means nursery or Montessori kind of a things. Lower primary means 1 to 3rd, or upper primary 3 to 5, middle school 5 to 7, high school 8 to 10, colleges or lower division means PUC colleges and other, and degree colleges, or graduate means professional means engineering colleges or medical colleges or nursing colleges or dental colleges, these kind of things, or technical colleges. Then adult education also will be available here. I think most of us know what is adult education, especially in the 80s. Karnataka has introduced this adult education, Vayaskara Shikshana. So this is also available in OER Commons. It supports user groups like students, teachers, administrators, parents, librarians. All of them can access these materials in OER Commons. And what are all the media's formats supported, like audio format, you can downloadable document formats, ebooks, graphics or photos are available for you to download, interactive media, PDF also is interactive if it is enabled, and the HTML, text or video. These are all the formats supported by OER Commons. Then these are all the languages. There are many languages supported, but these are the major 3 languages. I think 70% of the world population talks these 3 languages: English, Dutch, and Spanish. So this supports these 3 major languages. There are other languages also being supported, but not to the magnanimity of these languages. So there are these kind of materials available in OER Commons. So activity or lab reports 10,681, assessments, case studies, data sets, diagrams, full course, games, interactive lecture notes, lessons, lesson plans. Lessons are different and lesson plans are different. Modules, primary sources, reading, simulations, student guides, syllabus, teaching learning strategies. It's different from lesson plans and textbooks and unit of studies. These are all the thousands of materials available in OER Commons. So this is National Repository of Open Educational Resources. It is developed by CIET and NCERT. NCERT is the major organization supporting Indian school education. Started in 2013 in New Delhi in the ICT school education conference. So launched by the collaboration with the Development of School Education and Literacy, MHRD, Government of India. And MetaStudio was used as a platform, a software. MetaStudio is used to hosting the repository in an initiative of Knowledge Labs. And Trombay, Homi Jahangir Baba has started Baba Atomic Research Center, where this was the nodal point for starting NRO-ER. And it hosts large number of educational resources in many subjects. So, and in different languages, not only in English, many Indian languages, including primary, secondary, and senior secondary classes. So, there are different formats available in this: video, audio, image, documents, and interactive documents. So, NCERT books, especially flipbook format, it is available. So, it is a collaboratory format and reaching the unreached, especially those who have access. This is what the digital divide is called. So those who have access, they can get what kind of a material they want. But those who don't have access should also get. This is what reaching the unreached. This is a philosophy of a public library also. Institutions like SCERT, SIERT, SIE, Vignan Prasar, CCERT, Gujarat Institute of Education Technology, all these things are coming together to create educational content on MetaStudio platform under National Repository of Open Educational Resources. There are 14,455 e-resources, 14,895 registered users are there for this NRO-ER. This is Shodh Ganga. I don't need to tell you this. There are 250,000 plus theses available here. It started in 2004. and it's an Indian national repository of all the theses and dissertations in India. There are 900 plus universities, but only 476 are, having a MOU with Shodh Ganga, and uh, 15 MOU with the centrally funded technology institutions like IITs, IIMs, IASC, or NITs. These are all the institutions, 15 MOUs that are signed. It's an Inflippity initiative, which is very useful for accessing Indian theses and dissertations. Then this is what I was telling, Sci-Hub. There was a lady called, Alexandra Asanova Elbakyan, who has started this website called Pirate Bay of Sciences on September 2011, where you can access the copyrighted content from all the commercial publishers, because you do the research using the public funds and you publish in a commercial journals. They will take a copyright for that. They will take a benefit of that. So to reduce that, this, to break all the paywalls, this website has been created by Alexandra Elbakyan. There is a huge cases suits running on her. She's on absconding, but still the site is running. You go here, you can download any article developed by Kazakhstani computer programmer who is doing a PhD in Columbia University today. So though it started in 2011, in October 2019, 76 millions of academic articles and more than 4 lakhs requests a day. So every day 4 lakhs people, 4 lakhs requests are coming for the full text of the articles. This is how the articles access distribution, especially India, Iran, Russia, China, and US. So they are using this database heavily for downloading their materials. This is an article published by Washington Post. So this is what the use of Sci-Hub is. Then National Digital Library, which is the harvester of all the Indian repositories or institutional repositories. So it is primary school to research level. There are 6.8 million items available in more than 70 languages and 60 e-resource types available. Sources can be, the material can be sourced from NPTEL, InflipNet, NCERT, KrishiKosh, LibriVox, and more than 2 lakhs audiobooks are also available here. The advantage of audiobooks is, for example, in a city like Bangalore, if you are traveling in a traffic, you will not be able to read a book. But if you play an audiobook, you can listen to the audiobook and still continue to drive drive or listen to that by saving a lot of time. This is what Google Books is, as I said. It is, it can search 35 languages. So more than 10,000 publishers and authors of more than 100 plus, they contribute to this. And as on April 2, it's a old data, but books scanned and kept over here are over 30 million. 30 millions means 1 million is equal to 10 lakhs, means 3 crores books are available for you to access here. Especially 130 unique titles. Unique title is something, I have, Introduction to Computer. In my library, I have 20 copies of the same book. That book, I don't call it as 20 copy, but unique title, one title. So similar to this. Then this is what CAA fact book I was mentioning. You will get all the information about worldwide, countries and their geographies, their complete details. What is the mortality rate, death rate, average age of a person, what age first delivery is being delivered by a mother. All that information is available here. What are all the natural resources available? What are all the transportation? How many telephone lines are there? How many waterways are there? Seaports, airports. Every information is available here for you to access. This also gives most successful personals or chief of the countries with their cabinet is also given in India or worldwide. If you click on India, you can see the Narendra Modi cabinet of all the ministers and their portfolios. All that will be available here. Similar to Italy, America, everywhere you can see this information. This is very important. Started in 1992. For example, I have a website. I have built that website in 2002, and I have developed over that website in 2004. But if I want to access the old version of that, I'll not be able to see in my server, but I can see in Wayback Machine. If you go here and search for that date, or for example, you have bought a Airtel mobile with a plan, that plan was different in say 2010. The plan is changed now. And if you want to raise a complaint against Airtel, you have to find that old plan, which can be found, in here for a particular date. It's one of the best, for you to recover websites or find out what was happening that day information. So these are the open access bibliographic citations which I've said. There are two major things here: patents databases, which I said. So there is the Internet Archive of all the Nobel Prize winners, 1901 to today, where you can find out who has won what Nobel Prize for what purpose, all that. And World Bank open data, whatever complete data, because World Bank reports are one of the top informative reports. You can find the World Bank data here, and IMF also similar here. So these are all the bibliographic citation sources: Zotero, Mendeley, Google Scholar. If the time permits, I could have done that, but now there is no way I can do that. But you can download Mendeley, Zotero for your all referencing purpose. This is a NASA technical reports database. There are more than millions of reports are available for you to freely access on an open access platform. So this is for the first one covers 1915 to 1958, and the second phase covers 1958 onwards to present. So it contains all the links to terabytes of information for all images, photos, movies, videos from NASA Image Exchange. Earlier there was something called NASA Image Exchange, which has discontinued, but all that information can be found here. So this is a trade bank. I kept this very important because we find an organism, for example, snake. What is the trait of that? It is either hissing sound, and also it raises its hood. So that's a basic nature of basic trait of a organism. So this website will give complete traits of an organism. For example, mongoose, we don't know the trait of that. We can find out using this website. And this is a biodiversity information available here. So 1.64 millions of species information is available here, where for you to access from 8,016 publishers, lot of almost more than 50 crores geo-referenced information is available here, where you can find out what area has got what biodiversity, what plants, what tropical areas has got what information. All that is available here. So this is very important. This website will give you extinction of animals, means the animals which are in the extinction phase. Like for example, we have what we call gubachi, I'm not able to recall that. So we don't see those species today because of the mobile radiation. Those are extinction species. So what are all the species on the verge of extinction? This website will give you all that information. So these are all the other OER websites: Connections, SOLR, P2PU, Free Images, Free Text, OpenLearn, Khan Academy, Hippocampus, and Consortium of Universities, OpenCourseWare, Consortium. All these places you will get a lot of open education resources. So the other important resources are Derwent, Anilo, Multex, Google Finance, Yahoo Finance. So this is a place where you get a lot of financial information of an organization and countries. So ETHSIS portal, Google Books, DOAJ, so open access thesis and dissertations, Project Gutenberg, over 61,000 free ebooks are available for you to access. Internet Archive, where you'll get 401 billion archived web pages, 5.3 million videos, 8.2 million audios, 23 million books, almost 500,000 of software, and 250,000 of concerts, means music concerts. All these available here. So other sources: Hathi Trust, trust which has got 1 million of information available on public domain. This is developed by Ministry of Human Resource and Development in India. So to conclude, in the interest of time, resources in general play a very significant role in our day-to-day work. It can be teaching, it can be research, it can be learning. So it is very important for us to be better skilled professionals to find out the information related to user requirements, to assist their requirements, information requirements. So as we know, internet has made the world possible. When I was a child, whatever was dreamt of is a reality today because of internet. And effective use of ICT and ICT technologies would enable anyone to better web discovery and better web federated search, so that if you inculcate all this new and new information, it is very important, or you can go a long way in helping the user in finding the resources of his interest. With that, I conclude my thing. I thank you for the patient listening. I hope this is of use to you, and you can always reach me on my this email ID. And good luck. Thank you.